Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, I see people joining this session. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, so as y'all know, my name is Selvi, and welcome to our MBA essay workshop. So this is for MIT Sloan, which is covered by none other than Amrita from Encore's Vantage. And she will walk through the essay structures for MIT Sloan and also show a few real essays in today's presentation. But just quickly, to inform you all how this will work. So we will have a presentation followed by a Q&A. If you guys have any questions, you can actually start posting them in the Q&A tab, which you will see right down below. If you find any question that you already saw and you want to ask, no need to ask it again. You can actually upvote that question by giving it a like. That way we'll know which questions to ask first. So that's pretty much it for this session. I hope you guys find this very valuable. And yeah, thank you so much, Amrita, for doing this. I'll give it over to you.
Thank you, Selby, and good to meet everyone. Welcome everyone to this session. So just very quickly, I'll take a minute to just explain. I work with Encores, which is an admissions consulting firm. So I've been working over here for a few years and with a lot of MBA candidates over the years. And so that's why we're covering this MIT Sloan session. It is a very distinct school in terms of what they ask and what they're looking for. So we'll go through everything step by step. I'm just going to quickly move to the agenda. These are some of our placements over the years. But yeah, the agenda for today is that we'll start with the cover letter, the MIT Sloan cover letter. We'll touch briefly on the organizational chart as well. And then there's an essay that's sort of named The World That Shaped You. So we'll cover that essay. And MIT Sloan also has 2 video essays. So I'll run you through the 2 video essays as well. Given that we have a lot to cover in about 30 minutes. I will go a little fast through each of the points, but anything, like Selby said, if anything comes up, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A. We'll take it up at the end of the presentation. Okay, so with that, I'm going to begin. So the first one that we're covering is the cover letter, the very sort of famous standard cover letter for MIT Sloan. I hope you can see my screen completely. So this is MIT Sloan has had this cover letter for many, many years. They haven't changed it. And, you know, the most important thing for any essay when you're writing, whether it's for a Sloan or whether it's for another school, is to actually take a very good and clear look at the prompt that they've put out. The prompt actually probably has all the hints that you need to answer an essay effectively. So as you can see over here, I've highlighted some of the parts of the prompt in yellow and orange to sort of showcase that what are those key words or key points that they want you to think about when you're answering the prompt. So here for MIT, they put down very clearly what is it that they're looking for, who are they looking for, and it really helps to know that, you know, if you have anything that's connected to the themes that they are seeking, then it's very important to actually mention that in the essay. You can do it implicitly, you can do it explicitly, but it is essential for you to bring that story in so that you can tell them that, yes, I am the person that you are seeking. There are a number of different elements over here. So, and of course, the second part of the prompt, of which in this case, is that while they're setting out and telling you what they're looking for, they're also very clearly telling you how to write that cover letter, because it is a bit different from a standard MBA application essay. So they're telling you conform to a standard business correspondent, make it actually like a cover letter that you would probably send out for a job, right? If you're job hunting. And the same way that you would address a cover letter for your jobs, which is bringing in examples, bringing in your experiences, you know, making sure that every sort of, you know, a sentence over there counts because you don't want to make a cover letter too long. That's the same sort of mindset that you want to bring to this prompt. So what will make a very strong cover letter? You want to make it concise and persuasive. When they say 300 words, they mean 300 words. Don't go over 300. That will be sort of a flag for them. Then, of course, keep it professional. We don't want a very creative essay. We don't want a very casual essay. We want a professional tone to come in. And something that I want to highlight is be confident, get humble. It does matter not only for MIT, but for every school that you convey confidence, but at the same time, humility. So there shouldn't be any arrogance in there. But yeah, you want to keep it professional. You want to keep it, you know, you don't want to make it sound like you're begging or you're pleading. You want to be professional in your tone. Secondly, keep in mind that it's very important to show and not tell. What that means is that every time you have a result or you have some sort of outcome or impact to talk about, focus on that versus just talk about I did this, that, and the other, right? So tell them it's better to pick 2 or 3 examples that show your results rather than pick a laundry list of 5 or 10 different responsibilities that you have completed over time. And then, of course, as it is for every other school, make sure you demonstrate how all of these things tie in together and fit into Sloan's culture. So independent, authentic, fearless, innovative, collaborative, ethical. These are all things that are mentioned in the prompt. If you read the prompt carefully, the yellow points that I had highlighted. So make sure that you're connecting all the results and that you have brought into the essay back to the Sloan culture and how you embody that Sloan culture already, right? So lastly, if they're connecting to the other points, that go deep into your stories, give them evidence, give them anecdotes, not just for this school, for pretty much every school, but that's what makes a strong cover letter. Not if you just say that I am, like the example I've given, I'm smart and driven, but maybe, something that you can showcase that I this was a project that I worked on, which, I had to use this kind of insight, or this, I had to problem solve in this way, and I took the initiative to do it. That shows me that you're smart and driven versus you spelling it out that I am smart and driven. So that's for, what will make a strong cover letter. I'm also sharing a course structure that helps, but keep in mind that this is not the only structure that you need to follow. There is no, template that works for everyone. So please remember that while this is a standard course structure, yours can deviate, and very often the structures will deviate. But as a starting point, you can look at this and use it as like a, sort of just an outline for you to keep in mind that, okay, if I had to think about putting everything together, how can I do that? So always, anytime you're starting, you want to start with a hook. You want to ideally link that hook immediately to your life or work. You don't want to start with a, hi, dear admissions committee, I am applying to Sloan because of XYZ. You don't want to kind of do that. You just kind of, want to jump right in and give them the 1 or 2 sentence motivation for why, you are applying or you are putting in this application. Then go into the body of the cover letter, where you can use the first paragraph to talk about a strong professional example. Ideally, keep it to 1 professional example because depth is always better than breadth. So keep it to 1 professional example that again connects to Sloan traits somehow, right? Like the true doer mentality. They do really value that. They want to see that someone is not just thinking, they're not just a thinker, but they really are a doer. They are going out there in the field and doing whatever needs to be done to make, achieve their targets. So sort of come up with 1 professional example from your experience that conveys kind of that mentality, and then also use numbers to make it concrete. So don't just say I did this and then leave it at that. If you have numbers, I'm not saying if that you don't have numbers, make them up, but if you do have numbers, please add those in because numbers always provide strong context, right? So once you've covered your 1 example, then go into the second example. This can be either personal or professional, depending on whichever one of them is strongest. So try to show a different side of you from the professional example that's already been covered. You don't need to be repetitive in what you've said. You don't need to reiterate, but what you can do is show a different side of you. So any trait that you, if you feel like there are 2 or 3 traits that really speak to you or that you really embody, pick 1 or 2 for the first example, or then pick 1 or 2 for the second example. So you're kind of diversifying your experiences in terms of what you're showcasing, and also diversifying the strengths that came out through those experiences in your personal life. Then, of course, where you towards the end, where you're sort of closing, you want to try and connect all of these pieces together now, and talk about how they connect truly to Sloan's opportunities. So every school has a number of clubs, professors, labs, initiatives, project exchanges, so many experiences that they offer, and you can actually select and find out which few of these experiences are truly valuable for you. Now, again, depth is better than breadth. Don't have to come up with 10 different things, just 2 or 3 strong points that you think that, okay, these are directly connected to me. They could be classes, they could be courses, they could be something outside of academics, but obviously related to Sloan. And if you feel like, okay, no, this is really something that I feel that works for me, and I can, see myself there, I see myself doing those things, I maybe see myself contributing as well, then those are the ones that you want to pick. And of course, they have to connect to your stories as well. If you've highlighted certain traits, don't go totally out of the realm and talk about something now, like a fifth or sixth different trait. Try to keep the theme going so that it makes coherent sense, just the same way you would do for a job application. And finally, one very important thing for Sloan is that while they're looking for you to join and tell them why you want to come to Sloan and what you bring to the table, they also want to see someone who really cares about other people's experiences and wants to enhance that experience. So keep that contribution, paying forward mindset when you're applying to Sloan. You do want to talk about how all of these trends and how all of your experiences will come together to add value to other people in your cohort, so your peers essentially. And that kind of is the best way to close out the MBA MIT Sloan application cover letter, right? So end it with the confident, warm, sort of forward-looking. I hope to contribute in this way to MIT Sloan, right? So this is a sample letter. Now, cover letter, right? Like I said, the structure is one to just keep in mind to kind of help you out, help you think about how you can write things down. But feel free to change the structure or edit the structure as you need to do for your own story. So this is just a sample letter. If you see, it starts off telling, like the hook that I mentioned, that starts off with that one sentence that I feel inspired to solve problems and challenge the status quo. So immediately, the reader knows that this is what the person is highlighting as their sort of core strength, right? Then this individual goes on to tell that how did she use all of this particular strength in an example, right? This is her undergraduate consulting club, but how does she use that as an example? Then she goes on to talk about another example. So in her case, she's chosen 2-3 different examples, and you can do the same. Of course, as long as it stays within 300 words, you can do the same thing. But up to you if you feel like you want to go deeper into a particular example, because sometimes you do have to bring out a lot of context, a lot of storytelling in the background to sort of come to the main point. And while, of course, you'll keep that concise, you may not have space for too many examples. So that's perfectly fine. Both approaches work. In her case, she had the opportunity to go, mention 2-3 distinct examples where she was connecting the dots, talking about her strengths, talking about the work that she did. If you're reading this, you will see that there's a less show and there's more tell, right? There's an anecdotal piece coming in saying that this is what we created, this is what we did, this is how we did it. There's a lot of we, there's also some I. So there's a good balance between teamwork and, of course, drawing out, the individual strength or the individual contribution. And then finally, there's that, if you see the last paragraph, that's concluding the way we had mentioned earlier, which is talking about how now she sees herself in the future at Sloan, right? What she hopes to do at Sloan, and how she's also going to contribute to others within that environment. And that becomes very important. That kind of is, sort of cements it in that, okay, I'm this person, I'm bringing in all these strengths. I am the person you are looking for. But honestly, I'm also the person who is going to give back to others and who's looking at this as a shared experience, right? And then, of course, you can choose to put in the last line. It's not needed at all. It's completely up to you. If you have space, you can do it. If you don't, you can leave it out. The last line, which is thank you for your consideration. I look forward to hearing from you. That's typically very often what people put in cover letters, so that this person has added it here, but you do not need to if it's not fitting within the 300-word limit. So we'll move on to the next one, which is the organizational chart. Of course, if you do have any questions about the cover letter piece, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. But moving on to the organizational chart, and I am moving through this a little quickly. I hope you guys don't mind, because I just want to make sure that we're covering everything. But yeah, so for the organizational chart, now this is different. None of the other schools have this organizational chart. So I'm going to move through it very quickly because a lot of it is already explained on the website. There isn't too much creativity that you need to put in over here, or too much brainstorming that you need to do, because an organizational hierarchy will remain the way it is. Sloan has also put in an FAQ section, what are the different ways you can showcase your organization's hierarchy if you're working in a slightly different structure. So maybe in consulting, you would focus on a project. If you're running your own organization, you want to kind of keep yourself in the middle and then talk about all the other elements on the side. So there might not be a, top-down structure, but there might be a more of a round circular structure that you can report. If you're in the military, then again, there's a different way to do it. But essentially, Sloan puts out all of this information in their FAQ section. So please make sure that you read it carefully and see how you can best present your organizational structure. So what's the purpose of this chart? Sloan wants to see how do you fit or where do you fit into your company's hierarchy, right? So what is your seniority level? What is the influence that you have? What is the decision-making power that you have? And why do they want this information? Because it really helps them contextualize all of your, what you say, the cover letter, what is there in your resume. It helps them it helps give them context of why or how you have achieved whatever you have, right? Of course, they want to see who do you influence directly or indirectly. The structure tells them because maybe you're working in a big team or you're working in a smaller team. Maybe you're working cross-functionally. Maybe, you're working directly with a lot of senior level management, or maybe you're not working with senior level management. And there's no good, bad. There's no right, wrong. It is what it is. They just want to understand it better. Of course, they want to understand the scale of your environment and how connected you are to other people in your organization, especially the more decision-making people within the organization, decision-making sort of hierarchy and structure. They want to see where you fit into all of these factors, right? So the sample that's presented over here is the same one that's on the MIT Sloan website. The reason I've picked this sample, of course, I cannot directly share confidential information from people who've applied, so I couldn't share their samples. But also, this is a very, very strong, perfect example of seeing that if you have an organizational structure that's hierarchical, you want to start with the president or the CEO or the topmost person right up top over there, and then step by step move down from there. Please highlight where you sit. The simple mistakes that happen in these organizational charts is people forget to tell the adcom where they're located. They forget to highlight where their recommenders might be structured within this hierarchy. And maybe your recommender is not from the organization, which is okay. But if the person is, then please mention it. There's also, it's important to mention what are the different departments, how big is the company size, if you have reportees and how many people are reporting to you, who's the exec. Of course, as you can see over here, the person has put for every level that the top level is the executive staff. Below that is the division presidents. And you can do that. You can use this very sort of clean, simple structure as a sample for how you can create your organizational chart. Try and limit your organizational chart to just one page. It is recommended that you do that unless you have different you can say distinct operations within the company, where in one sort of way you're working with one team or one structure, and in another way you're working with someone totally different. Then maybe you can split it into two. But it is recommended, if that's not the case, which is majority of the time, then you keep it limited to one page itself. And yeah, so I just want to once quickly also highlight that these are in the prompt, they have given certain, you can say, important directions for you to follow. So please follow these directions. If they said circle your role in red, please don't go ahead and circle it in green. Try and keep to exactly what they have said. It is important that you do follow the instructions and tell them exactly what they're looking for, because the easier they find it to read your particular application and your particular organizational chart, the easier it is for them to say yes or no to you, right? So please make sure that you listen to or do as they're asking you to do. All right, then moving on to the next essay, which is The World That Has Shaped You. This is a slightly newer essay. It's not as old as the cover letter, but it is an important essay. It's a short essay, which is 250 words. Of course, the cover letter is also a short cover letter, but 250 words to really learn about your background. So you'll see MIT Sloan is not asking you about your goals directly, or they're not asking you about, the standard sort of questions that a lot of the other business schools ask you. They really try to contextualize and understand you as a person as a whole. They've devoted one the cover letter to a professional sort of pursuit, professional experience. They've devoted the organizational chart also to the profession, to your professional experience. But now this particular prompt is not asking about your professional experience. It's actually asking about your personal experience. And that too, not, you're asked to not pick a random or any sort of personal story that you want to share, but you're asked to pick a story or an anecdote or an insight about who you are and how did you come to become this person that you are today, right? So think about your family, think about your culture, your community. Again, this is all that they have mentioned in the prompt. And think about how these aspects of life have shaped your perspective, right? Shaped you as a person. So talk about your background. Now, this is basically Sloan's way of saying that be authentic. Tell us why you think and act the way they do. They want to understand the context behind your values, your perspective, your drive. They do not want a biography. So please don't run down to a list of, I grew up over here and this is what I did. And then, I graduated from here. They don't want a list like that. They really want you to reflect. So think deeply about what has really shaped you. Maybe it could be some definitive experiences, one or two, three or four, or maybe it could be some everyday experiences. I can give you a rough example. If you had to say that I grew up in a big family, we all lived together, we all sort of, did everything together. And I think that's shaped how I think and behave around people. Or it could be that my family and I moved around a lot of places and we stayed in different countries, through different periods of time. I had to create friends, make friends every time, new friends, but I also learned so much about living in different cultures and different places. And maybe these apply to you, maybe they don't, but this is how you want to think about this particular prompt in this particular essay. Right, again, it's about depth, it's not about resume. So don't have to hash out your resume over here. You anyway have only 250 words, so use them very wisely to talk about the why behind the who you are, right? Key principles, think about one or two defining experiences. Again, depth over breadth, it matters. Don't try to cover your entire life. Like I said, talk about what is shaping you today, not what shaped you, 10 years, the person you were 10 years ago, but the person you are today. You can use a specific scene or a moment that talks about that. You don't have to give a generic description. In general, try to avoid generic descriptions. What happens with generic descriptions is that they could apply to anyone, right? And then they're not going to be able to contextualize your background effectively. So what will happen is that they might read it and they might, not be able to place you the way that they want to. So give details, give very important information that you think is really relevant to who you are, right? Connected to your personality, connected to your choices, your leadership style. And of course, this is an opportunity for you to talk about how it integrates with Sloan's values, right? This is a Sloan essay, so you don't have to just give them a general, this is what has shaped me, without thinking about what Sloan actually wants to see. Make sure that you are connecting it. You don't have to do it explicitly, but at least implicitly to what Sloan wants to see. So if they want, you can see what, use the prompt of the cover letter as a reference to say okay, this is what Sloan wants to see. Maybe there were some themes that I was able to cover in the cover letter. Maybe there are certain themes that I can use and cover over here. So use this opportunity wisely. Do tailor it to Sloan. Don't just, pick from another school's essay and dump it over here. That wouldn't be effective. And lastly, is it okay to show struggles? Yes, you can. If you feel like the struggles have shaped you, please do use that. It's perfectly fine. You can be authentic, you can be vulnerable, but then talk about it from the perspective of how they've equipped you or how they've made you the person today. So again, you don't want to go back into the struggles and just, mention it as a defining experience. You really want to connect it to how it has shaped you into the person you are today and why you think that that's a definitive experience or something from the world that you have come from that does define you, right? So this is in general the principles that you need to keep in mind for this essay. A quick example, this from, again, there's no, like I said, there are very different ways. There's no course structure or a template that you need to follow. This is something you can make your own. This particular person drew back into his experience, spoke about his grandfather and his mother and the kind of mindset that they came with and the kind of mindset that they brought to him and his, of course, upbringing. And over that mindset of doing things on their own, being proactive, taking charge of their opportunities, or making sure that they've sort of became self-made. So that's what this person grew up with. That's what he saw his grandfather and his mother do. And so that's the kind of you can say mindset that he brought to his opportunity or his experiences. So whether it's taking advantage of the fact that there's a craze for glow in the dark wristbands at a young age, or whether there is potential in developing niche mechanical tools for robotics when he was in college. All of these things from his background kind of shaped how he thought about opportunities, how he thought about different scenarios in his life. And so now that whole driven and of course drive is a very important, you can say, Sloan value. So that self drive that he brought to the table was because of his background. It is connected to Sloan's value as well. It is also connected to a very forward thinking that I want to do something for others. How do I sort of take my background and work with it? I'm problem solving. I'm the true doer mentality. That's what he's connecting all of these things to. So it's a kind of a complete what the world that has shaped you essay, with anecdotes, with specific details, and with the connection to Sloan, as well as the bringing in the whole background that has shaped him as and his mindset, right? So this is one of the samples. Of course, like I said, please feel free to be creative in this essay, make it your own. You don't have to stick to a particular structure, but do go for depth over breadth. The next one is a video essay. I think we're running a little short on time, so I'm going to move through this very, very fast. But this is there are two video essays. The first one is about an introduction. So you have to introduce yourself, and you can record this. You can pre-record this particular prompt, this particular essay, right? Video essay. So again, make sure that you're keeping to the guidelines. Make sure that you're not deviating from that. You are taking, finishing everything in a minute. There's a single take, there's no editing, so you're not piecing together multiple, I spoke for 20 seconds and I put it together with the remaining 40 seconds. You don't want to do that. Then speak to the camera, don't look here and there, and do not include background music, subtitles, little gifs here and there. They don't want that. They just want a clean video with just you speaking to the camera. All right, so some examples of what you can do. Try to mix professional and personal. Again, they don't want you to sort of just talk about your resume, right? They don't want you to rehash that. They don't want you to sort of go in it as a biography. Bring a personal and professional angle to this introduction. Don't read, because of course, sorry, before that, keep it conversational. So you can imagine when you're giving the introduction, imagine that you're giving it to a group of people that are your meeting or your cohort. You're already at Sloan and there's a welcome dinner and you're giving this introduction to them. So that will help you make it a little more comfortable and more conversational. Avoid reading, because that makes it very obvious, number one, that you're reading. It also prevents you from having that conversational tone. So instead, to prepare, you can use bullet points to remember what points you want to say. But yeah, don't script it out completely and then read it off. It sounds very robotic, very monotone. I mean, if you do avoid all of these things, you can still somehow tell that, people are reading, and I would definitely avoid that. Then smile, very important. A lot of people end up having a very straight poker face. Please do smile, even if it's briefly, here and there. It really just helps show that you're a normal person, that you're not stressed over here, and that, you won't be this very serious individual when you come to the classroom as well. So please smile. Don't speak in a monotone, be natural, bring that energy in. Again, don't lie down on your bed and record it as a selfie. Please don't do that. Keep it professional, bring your energy to the table, bring your personality to the table, be real, and of course, don't try to put in too much information. You have only 60 seconds. So again, go over depth instead of breadth as much as possible. This is a sample structure. You don't need to keep to it. I'm just giving this as a quick example. This person spoke about, when she was doing her Sloan video essay. This is how she started. She said, "Hi, I'm Priya, a product manager from Mumbai who once turned a failed prototype into my team's biggest success. And I learned I love turning challenges into wins." So it's it gives her name, it gives her origin, it gives a quick personal story. This is a good way to start. You don't have to stick to it, but this is an idea of what you can do. Again, for the next sort of 10 to 35 seconds, you want to pick some markers. So maybe one professional highlight, maybe one personal fun fact or a passion that you want to bring in. If you have time, you can talk about community involvement or interest. Again, don't make it a laundry list, but if you feel like you have time, you can play around with these ideas. Then use the remaining 10 to 20 seconds to talk about your connection to Sloan and the value add that you'll bring. Sloan, like I said, really does care about what you'll contribute. So try to tie that in with what they're looking for and with what you'll bring to the table. And then just towards the end, say a goodbye and be warm about it. Maybe smile at this point if you haven't smiled all this while. So make sure you smile and say goodbye to the adcom, right? And you can record this so you don't have to do it on the spot. The last one, which is an on-the-spot essay, on-the-spot video essay, and my time is up, so I'm just going to run through it in a minute. But an on-the-spot video essay, this kind of is something that you cannot prepare for, but you do have some ideas about, or you have some frameworks that you can keep in mind for, what will you talk about if this essay comes up. So here are three sort of big question types. Some of the questions could be, what are you most proud of? Or then they could be, tell us about a time, or they could be, what's your favorite way to spend a weekend? So there are different ways to answer these questions. This is just a sort of rough framework that's been put out. I can always share this in the Q&A later, but just some ideas to keep in mind if you do want to prepare a little bit for this essay. And use your 10 seconds that you get to sort of think about what you'll talk about, what's the one key takeaway that you'll bring. And when you're talking to the camera, avoid rushing, smile again. Please do smile. Warmth is important. Don't, forget what you have to say and go on a different tangent. Try to keep to the point as much as you can. And of course, make sure that you can fit it in within the 60 seconds so that you don't end up abruptly ending the video essay, right? So that's about it. Opening it up for questions and answers now. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amrita. And I do see some awesome questions here. And there was someone who did ask if replay is available. I understand a lot of the info here is gold, and yes, they will be in the same platform that you guys registered in. So stay tuned there. But again, thank you so much, Amrita. If you guys ask your questions in the chat, please put them in the Q&A because we'll be covering those questions first. So let's start with the first one. With respect to organizational chart, if I have held various positions cutting across during various years, and if I am presently in a functional role but cutting across whole company, but earlier held operational role heading a separate division, then can I show multiple charts or should I stick to my present role only?
Sure, this is a good question. So stick to the present role only. You do not need to show multiple, functions over time. What you can do is that if you're doing a lot of cross-functional work, then, maybe instead of a straight line that's connecting whether horizontally or vertically, you can use dotted lines. And then you can put a little legend on the side that says, I'm working with, this dotted line is to show cross-functional work because this might be my main team, but I'm working with XYZ teams as well. So that dotted line helps to make connect the dots literally.
Gotcha. All right. Next question. Any specific advice about dual degree candidates, Harvard MPP plus MIT MBA?
I think the general advice in terms of, all the essays and how you think about essays, look at the school's prompt very carefully, look at what the school is asking for and what they're looking for. And of course, make sure that you're answering correctly to the relevant program, but you do have to get admitted to both programs for a dual degree. So your applications have to be equally strong for both programs, but no other specific advice. Of course, if I happy to, maybe on one-on-one connect and learn more about the background. But in general, this is it.
Awesome. Again, guys, I see the questions in the chat. Please do add them in the Q&A tab. You'll see it right down below. The next question, could you explain how entrepreneurs should navigate the organizational chart?
Sure. So actually, MIT does put that in their FAQ, and you should check that out. Basically, what they've asked for is that if you are an entrepreneur, put yourself at the center instead of having a sort of top-down organizational chart. Put yourself at the center, and then but mention the various departments that you work with. Of course, there'll be internal departments and external departments. So again, you can use a legend to sort of showcase that these are the internal departments. Maybe they're covered in a particular color. Try to avoid the colors that MIT has asked you to reserve for certain things. But maybe you can use a different color or a different line, like a dotted line or any other way that you want to represent it. But you can also, as an entrepreneur, if you do really have too many things to showcase on one screen, you can maybe go into 2 pages. But if it's possible to fit it into one page, maybe divide the page into two parts, then that would be better to do. So yeah.
Okay. Could you give a sample of what a successful video essay is like? Is the goal to be memorable?
The goal is not to be memorable. I would say that what MIT is really looking to see is that you are an individual who is, who basically the person behind it, that you have behind your application, that you have strong communication skills, that you really are not someone who is just not robotic, not someone who is going to be like a very, you can say, not engaging person in the classroom. So just, of course, your personality has to come out. There's no particular type, I would say, right? Just be yourself, be authentic. That is who they're looking for. There's no good and bad. They just want to know that, you will fit into their culture, you'll fit into the MBA environment, you'll fit in with all your peers, and that you wouldn't feel left out in the MBA experience. But don't take it as pressure on yourself. Just be yourself, honestly, and they would like it.
Awesome. Someone here asked, are contraction words such as I'm, can't, don't, etc. allowed in the cover letter?
Yes, contraction words are allowed. I would keep them to a minimum. What that means is that don't try to, use too many, because you don't want it to look casual. But contraction words are allowed in the cover letter. They are also allowed in the essays. Avoid using things like ampersands, because that's, you want to spell out AND and not put an ampersand over there. But other than that, contraction words are okay. Just don't fill it up with contraction words. Some places you can keep it, some places you want to spell it out, like I will be I have. You want to spell that out.
Gotcha. All right. Next question. In the question, the world that shaped you, what should be the strategy? Is it a diversity question? Should I connect it to my background in terms of diversity or adversity? What is MIT trying to understand from this question?
Sure. So it's not a diversity question. They're just trying to understand your background. If you feel like whatever has shaped you, if you feel the diversity aspect of your background has shaped you, then that's what you want to bring out. If you feel like the adversity has shaped you, then that's what you want to talk about. But it's not that they are looking for one or the other. They are okay with whichever it is, as long as it has really had an impact on you as you are today. Again, not had an impact on you and made you the person you were 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and today you're a different person. No, not that. The person that you are today, what has shaped you, what experience has shaped you into that person. So whatever it is for you, you can speak to that.
Gotcha. Next question. If my company has a very horizontal structure in terms of formal designation, but there's an internally understood hierarchy that exists, for example, driven by experience or seniority, how do I represent this in the chart? Can I provide a little explanation or context alongside the relevant tiers in the chart?
Again, very good question. And I do want to say this. I'm glad you asked, because like I mentioned earlier, you can, instead of giving a sort of, in the organizational chart, like you'll see any other organizational chart, there isn't really text that you mention as like a, paragraph or a sentence, but you can put a legend. So maybe you can keep more, certain colored lines or certain patterned lines for certain structures and other patterned or colored lines for other structures. What you can also do in this case, and I would recommend this for anyone who is, not sure about how to represent, please drop an email to MIT. So you can do that with any school. Anytime you're stuck on something and you feel like you really are not sure how to move ahead, the admissions committee or the, just the staff, the school staff is actually very helpful. They will respond to you. So just drop an email to them saying, I'm getting stuck over here. Could you guide me on how to go about this? And the more detail you can give to them, the better they might be able to answer. But please feel free to reach out to them. On their website will have the email address that you can reach out to, and email is the best way. So just drop an email to them saying, this is my query and how do I go about this? And more or less, they will get back to you.
Awesome. Okay, next question. Could you discuss if the same details need to be followed for the LGO application as well?
Yes, more or less the same. You can, of course, there will be certain things that you need to keep in mind. And again, I don't want to go into too much detail on it, but more or less the same. It is pretty much the same for everyone, right? The application for your particular context. If you feel like there's somewhere you're getting stuck, you can reach out to the adcom, or you can reach out to, of course, us separately. But in general, it won't change drastically.
Okay. Is mentioning struggles a put off or seen as a strength?
It depends on how you mention your struggles. If you mention the struggles just as a struggle, and you're kind of like making yourself a victim in it, or if you are just talking about it to just sort of just mention it without any takeaway from it, then yes, the struggle will be a put off. But if you frame that struggle as an experience that again was important in your life, perhaps it mattered to you in a certain way, it shaped you in a certain way, or took your life in a certain direction that it wasn't in before. If you shape your struggle as a growth experience, then it is not a put off. It is seen as a strength. You are, as long as you're growing from it, as long as you are learning from it. So if you put it in that way, then yes. But don't put your struggle as you don't want to get a sympathy or a pity vote from them. That they won't appreciate that. So make sure that you're not veering in that direction.
Gotcha. How would you go about the organizational chart in the Army?
That's a great question again. So MIT has actually specifically mentioned in their FAQ about how to do that. I would encourage you to go and check that and see if then there's still any unanswered question, because it's the best to see how MIT wants it. I don't have it memorized, so I'm not going to be able to share about that, but please do check the website. They do have the FAQs. Read through very carefully. If there's one piece of important advice that I could give to everyone over here, it will be that, in your application form and on the school's website, please go through it thoroughly, because a lot of questions get answered. Schools do anticipate such things, so they mention information beforehand. And if you just look through very carefully, you'll be able to find it. Also, if you don't look through, you might miss something important. So please make sure that you go through everything in detail, step by step.
Awesome. Okay. Someone did ask in the chat though, guys, please do add in the Q&A tab. Can we mention how your relationship with your girlfriend or partner has shaped you as a person?
Yes, it can. And you will have to pick certain anecdotes or certain defining, key points. But you can definitely, if you think that that is a defining experience, or that's an important experience that you can, has had a very strong impact in your life, absolutely you can.
Okay. With respect to organization chart and organizations, what if I've worked in a couple of unicorns in India who are industry leaders? How can we mention charts where I'm currently reporting to the CEO of a unicorn and then report to a senior VP? How can we show the unicorn that does hire few and better? The GMV would be high, but the number of employees are less, around 300. Also, since I chose to never work in an MNC or big three or fours, will that impact in viewing my profile?
So no, it doesn't matter which environment you're working for. What they are looking for is how you are growing and how you are contributing to any environment that you're in. So to answer the second question first, it doesn't make a difference. And how would you show that? I think at the structure, as long as you're talking about one company or one organization that you're working for, the structure would of course depending on the structure, but the chart would be pretty much similar, because you will talk about who you're directly reporting to. Then you can talk about, again, use a creative method, maybe a dotted line, to show that maybe you're directly reporting to the VP, but you have an indirect report, or you are an indirect report to your CEO. So you can go ahead and do
Mhm.
that. Again, they do in the FAQ for MIT, there is a consultant section, and if you feel like that's the most similar structure to what's relevant to you, then you can use that as well. Use that sort of,
Gotcha.
yeah.
All right, we do have 2 more minutes, so we can maybe cover them a bit quicker because there are plenty of questions here. Um, Someone here asked for the video essay, should they choose a creative background setting, like somewhere in a park?
For which essay, sorry?
I think the video essay prompts, should they choose like a creative background?
No, not required. In fact, the quieter and the more less cluttered your space is, so you don't want any distractions behind. So the more like I said, quiet and cleaner the space is, the better it is. I wouldn't recommend having people talking behind, or something happening behind that's too distracting.
Okay. Also, do we get a retake in impromptu video answers?
No, you don't. You don't get
Okay.
any takes.
In case I'm on a career break, should I select the org chart from my past job role where I had maximum impact or share multiple OG charts?
No, just the last one. Again, this is a question you should ask MIT Sloan itself. But if you are on a career break, the most previous one will be the best one, because that's the one you'll be referring to in your resume as well as in your essays. Most of them.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Um, For the org chart, I'm an engineering consultant working primarily with two clients. Both are big companies. Should I show both org charts?
No, for a consultant, you will show your consulting organizations chart. Again, MIT has put it up on their website. I would encourage you to look at it and see how they want you to mention the org chart for as your consultant role. But go ahead and do that only for the organization you're working for.
Gotcha. AI detectors consider Grammarly as AI. How do you suggest we navigate AI regarding our essays?
That's a great question. So, AI, the content should be yours, the thought should be yours. So all of the, you can say, information should be yours. AI shouldn't be thinking for you. What AI can do is correct grammar. That's perfectly fine. They're very okay with that. As long as you are not asking AI to tell me what to say in this essay, that's, they're okay with you using it for just correcting your language.
Okay. And I think I can take up the last one. I work for a prominent hedge fund with about a net total of 14 employees. I've worked here as an analyst for only about 2 years. A is showing a flat hierarchy valid. B is the lesser work X an issue.
The flat hierarchy is valid. That's okay. They're just asking you for your context and you can give whatever you have. Is lesser work X an issue? We do encourage people to take some time and put in 3 to 4 years of work experience. It's always better. The more work experience you have, the stronger your profile is, and therefore the stronger your application can be. So we would encourage you to take some more time if that's possible. But then depending on your personal circumstances, which I don't know, you may or may not want to apply now or versus later.
Awesome. All right. Well, that covers most of the questions. There were some that were repetitive, so I didn't bring those up. But thank you so much, Amrita. I'll catch you in the next session. And yeah, for those who want to watch this again, feel free to see the replays in the same registration website that you guys signed up for. So thank you guys so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.